Good morning. Thank you for taking a moment to check the blog today. And we're going to be talking a little bit this morning about writing an assessment question. One of the most important parts of making sure you have a really good assessment plan is starting out with the question of what do you want to know about your students. Very often this is a step that we skip over in our rush to assess. So we're going to talk a little bit this morning about how to write a really good one. So I've got some examples here that I want to go through with you on how to write a good question. The first is you want to make sure it's meaningful. If you're going to take the time and energy to assess your students for your course objectives or your program goals, then you want to make sure that it's going to be meaningful data to you. By that I mean that it's something that you can actually take the information from and make important changes to your curriculum. Next, you need to make it actionable. This needs to be something that when you get the information, it's going to be something that you can actually work on within your curriculum. It's not going to be related to something outside the purview of your program or your course. You can't necessarily change the socioeconomic demographic that your students come from or which high school they attended, so that's not an actionable item. But you can impact how they learn, and so those would be actionable. You want to make sure it's relatable to your program goals, your student learning goals, and your course objectives. I always believe in multiple bang for the buck. So student learning outcomes are very broad by nature. Course objectives are more narrow. Program outcomes are in between. So you should be able to pick an assessment item that will fit all three of those. Measurable. Make sure that this is actually something that you can measure. One of the ones that I always have difficulty with is people want to know about students' attitude. What kind of attitude? But attitude is very hard to measure. So let's pick a very specific skill or something that you can have them write about that you can actually measure. So usually it means narrowing down your research question. So too broad, I gave the attitude example. What attitudes do students need to possess to pass the problem-solving essay portion on my midterm exam? Well, that'd be good to know, but very hard to assess. A more narrow piece would be, what key concepts are students not understanding in the curriculum as reflected in the problem-solving essay on the midterm exam? Much more narrow and something you can actually assess. And finally, you need to make this a manageable data collection. Very often, especially, I'll pick on my scientists out there, very often for people conducting assessment in the sciences, they want to collect a multitude of variables. I had one faculty member who I won't name, who was collecting something like 25 variables on each of her students. That's not manageable. You can't keep up with that, nor can you affect most of the variables that she was collecting on. So only collect those things that you actually need to know in order to have an impact on curriculum and things that you have an impact on. So gender might be interesting or the time of the day of the class, but unless you have the ability to impact that, don't collect the variable. And always remember too that this is not your primary purpose in life, is not to do assessment. So you want to keep this data set very manageable and something that it's not going to overwhelm you as you go throughout the class. So writing an assessment question, most important first step in conducting really good assessment. Meaningful to you, actionable for your curriculum, relatable to the student learning outcomes, something you can actually measure. Keep it not broad, but narrow within your course. This is not reflecting your entire course, but just a portion of it. And finally, manageable. The keys to writing a good assessment question.